Ever feel like you're just swimming in information, trying to get a quick grip on something complex, but without drowning in all the detail?
Yeah, it's overwhelming sometimes.
Well, that's exactly the challenge we designed the deep dive to tackle. We take your sources articles, research, whatever you've got, and we basically act as your guides.
We pull out the most important nuggets, the key insights, maybe surprising connections.
And serve them up so you can get informed fast.
Our goal really is to cut through the noise.
Mm-hmm.
We don't just summarize. We try to help you understand what's important in the material you brought us and maybe more importantly, why it actually matters.
Exactly. And today, we're diving into the world of the safety specialist, a really essential role. We're exploring their core knowledge, what they prioritize, the challenges they face day to day, and our map for this, a collection of typical interview questions for this job.
Right. Our source material is this article that lays out 20 common interview questions for safety specialists. And it gives some insight into why those questions are asked.
So you can think of these questions almost like windows into the role, right? What do interviewers really want to find out?
And what does that tell us about the fundamental skills and understanding needed?
Yeah, we're here to extract those key insights about workplace safety, not just the what they know, but the why behind it all. Why that knowledge is critical for keeping people safe.
Prepare to maybe see safety from a slightly different perspective. Interview questions, they're rarely just random.
No, they're designed.
Exactly. They're crafted to reveal not just knowledge, but the person's approach, their priorities, how they solve problems. So looking at this list really helps us piece together what makes an effective safety specialist.
Okay, so if we're thinking about what's essential, where do you start? One question that seems to pop up early is about priorities. What are your top 3 priorities for safety?
Well, that question immediately flags what the specialist thinks is most critical. An interviewer uses it to understand their focus. Are they more about prevention or response or, a mix?
It shows their basic approach.
Yeah, their inherent approach to all the different safety situations they might face.
And the source gives some examples of, like, a strong answer. Things like making sure every employee is really engaged and follows the safety rules.
Compliance.
Doing regular audits and inspections to catch problems before they happen.
Proactive steps.
And then, if something does happen, properly investigating it, finding the root cause, and making changes so it doesn't repeat.
Exactly. Those covered the key bases. Engagement, proactive checks, and learning from incidents to improve. It's kind of the whole cycle.
Speaking of foundations, there's another big question. What do you think is the most important aspect of safety? Feels pretty fundamental.
It absolutely does. This one probes their basic understanding, their core philosophy, really, and how they see the big picture of safety.
The article makes a great point here. What's most important can depend, right? Like safety at work versus at home or out in public.
Sure, the context matters, but ultimately it kind of boils down to the same core goal: preventing harm. And in the workplace specifically, stopping accidents and injuries before they occur, that's paramount. The source really emphasizes this, involves, designing a safe physical space, making sure people have the right training and gear.
PPE and all that.
Yeah, and fostering vigilance, being aware, and having solid emergency plans ready to go. It's about building a system that minimizes the chance of harm, not just reacting after the fact.
Building that system? That sounds like a huge part of the job. And the questions definitely hit on this. Like asking about their experience actually developing safety programs.
Yeah, question gets into their practical experience. Can they actually construct these frameworks? The source points out this involves referencing key standards like OSHA regulations, kind of the backbone in the U.S.,
Right.
doing thorough hazard assessments for the specific workplace, and then writing all that up into clear, actionable safety plans.
And how do they know if those plans are, actually working day to day? That's where safety audits come in, I guess. Another question asked about experience with those.
Audits are critical.
Yeah.
Asking about them gives interviewers insight into the specialist's ability to go into the field, spot potential hazards, and assess the risks.
So finding the problems.
Finding the problems and making sure they get fixed. The purpose is pretty straightforward. Confirm the workplace is safe and ensure any issues found are actually dealt with.
Sounds like a lot of information flying around. Managing safety data is another area they ask about.
Oh, absolutely. This question checks their comfort level with collecting, analyzing, and, importantly, using safety data. Often involves specific software these days.
It's not just record keeping.
No, not at all. This data incident reports, inspection findings, logged in databases, it's crucial for spotting trends. Figuring out where the problems are and how things need to improve. It feeds that continuous improvement loop we mentioned.
And all this happens within like a legal framework.
Yeah.
Their view on safety regulations comes up too.
Yeah, interviewers want to understand how they see these rules. The source is pretty clear. Regulations are fundamental. They exist to protect workers, guarantee a minimum safety standard.
So not just red tape.
Not just red tape. It's about using those rules to keep people safe. And, crucially, the source adds that for regulations to work well, employees need specific training. Not generic stuff, but training tailored to their actual work environment, their company's hazards.
Okay, so we've got the systems, the regulations, but safety isn't just paperwork and compliance, is it? It feels profoundly about people,
Oh, completely.
which brings us to a huge area, safety culture.
This is where the human element really takes center stage. Questions about safety culture are asked to see if the specialist understands how shared values, beliefs, attitudes, behaviors, how all that shapes safety outcomes.
The soft stuff that's actually really powerful.
Immensely powerful, and often harder to manage than the technical side.
And the source draws a really clear line between a strong safety culture and a weak one.
It's a critical distinction. A strong culture, well, it thrives on genuine commitment from everyone. People feel safe reporting near misses, not just accidents. There's a focus on learning and improving, clear accountability.
And a weak one.
In a weak culture, safety often gets pushed aside for other priorities, maybe production targets. People might hesitate to speak up about hazards. Maybe there's a blame game instead of learning.
Yeah.
And just a general lack of trust or communication. The article rightly points out that building and keeping a truly strong safety culture needs unwavering commitment and very visible leadership from every level, starting right at the top.
That emphasis on leadership and commitment from everyone is powerful. And a big part of influencing that culture and just making sure people know how to be safe must be training. It's another key interview topic.
Training is absolutely non-negotiable. The question assesses their professional view on how to design and deliver it effectively. Good training is what empowers employees. It helps them understand their specific hazards, know how to use PPE correctly.
Personal protective equipment.
Right. And know exactly what to do in an emergency. The source lists different ways to do it online, classroom, on the job, hands-on stuff. And stresses, it has to be ongoing, not just a one-off orientation thing.
Training links right into how people behave. The article also mentions questions about human factors.
Understanding human factors is vital. It looks at how people interact with, well, everything, their tools, tasks, the environment, each other, and how those interactions impact safety.
So it's pretty broad.
It's very broad. From physical things like ergonomics, making the workspace fit the person, to reducing human error slips, lapses, to cognitive things like decision-making under pressure and social dynamics like communication and teamwork. Understanding all this helps you design safety systems that actually work with how people naturally operate rather than fighting against it. Leads to better prevention.
And ergonomics specifically, designing the workspace, that comes up as its own question too.
Yes, that question focuses right in on their ability to assess the physical setup. The goal is twofold. Make sure it's safe, obviously, but also efficient. Minimize strain, potential injury.
There's also this whole approach focused just on behavior, right? Behavioral-based safety, or BBS.
That question probes their experience with that specific methodology. BBS, well, it focuses on observing and influencing worker behavior directly to prevent accidents.
How does it do that?
The source mentions using things like positive reinforcement for safe actions, providing immediate feedback. The idea is that by systematically encouraging safe behaviors, you can make a real dent in the safety culture and, ultimately, bring down accident rates.
And all these human elements, culture, training, behavior, ergonomics, human factors, really just highlight how important it is for people to work together on safety. Teamwork comes up as a question.
Safety is rarely a one-person show. This question checks if they believe in collaboration, if they understand how different people contribute. The source really emphasizes that when teams work well together, spotting hazards gets easier, and the solutions they develop are often, more practical and effective.
Makes sense.
Good communication, good coordination between team members, absolutely critical for it to work.
Okay, so we've covered systems, culture, the human side. But what about the actual physical dangers? the things people usually think of first. How do the questions address identifying and preventing hazards? The article mentions asking about the biggest safety hazard.
Yeah, that's a classic. It's designed to quickly gauge their knowledge of common risks you'd find in many workplaces. The source gives a really common, concrete example: slips, trips, and falls.
Right, you hear about those all the time. Seems minor, but they can be really serious.
Precisely. The source details things that contribute, like wet floors, uneven surfaces, clutter in walkways. Simple stuff, often. Beyond that specific example, it lists other major hazards a specialist needs on their radar: electrical, chemical, ergonomic issues we mentioned, fire risks.
And the fact that slips, trips, and falls get their own specific quotient really underlines how important they are.
It does. The source reinforces that they're leading causes of workplace injuries. It repeats the usual suspects: poor lighting, wet floors, clutter, loose mats, but also points out simple, high-impact prevention steps.
Like what?
Just keeping floors clean and dry, using non-slip mats where needed, making sure there's good lighting. Basic things that can make a huge difference.
It seems like nailing these everyday prevention tasks is fundamental. Okay, so beyond spotting and preventing hazards, safety specialists also have to deal with things when they do go wrong. Investigating accidents comes up.
Yes, this question is used to understand their process. How would they approach an investigation? What's their experience? The source outlines the core steps: systematically identifying the root cause, the real why behind it.
Not just what happened on the surface.
Exactly. Interviewing witnesses, collecting evidence, documenting everything carefully.
Getting to that root cause. That connects to another question they ask, specifically about root cause analysis, or RCA.
Right. That's asked to see if they really understand how to dig beneath the surface of an incident or even a near miss to find the underlying reasons it happened. The goal isn't just paperwork, it's preventing it from ever happening again.
So it's less about blaming someone and more about figuring out why the system allowed it to happen.
Fundamentally, yes, that's the idea. The source defines RCA as systematically identifying those underlying causes of problems or incidents, specifically so you can find effective corrective actions. It mentions several techniques people use for this, like the 5 whys method, just keep asking why to peel back the layers, or visual tools like cause and effect diagrams, sometimes called fishbone diagrams, and fault tree analysis. These are just structured ways to avoid only treating the symptom.
This job sounds like it could be pretty intense sometimes. There's actually a question about how they handle stress related to safety issues.
Well, that's important, right? This question is trying to understand their coping mechanisms, especially in high-stakes situations, maybe involving risk or after something bad has happened.
See how they handle pressure.
Exactly. And it gives insight into their overall resilience, whether they'd be a good fit for the role's demands. Strategies mentioned in the source include things like staying calm, being organized to keep track of information, and importantly, knowing when and how to ask for help. Leaning on teamwork again.
Yeah, not trying to do it all alone. The whole safety field is constantly changing to new research, tech, regulations. How do they make sure they stay current?
This is crucial. You have to stay up to date for effective safety and compliance. The question checks their commitment to lifelong learning, really.
So what are the ways?
The source lists practical methods: checking official sources like the OSHA website regularly, subscribing to industry newsletters or journals, going to conferences and seminars, and networking with other safety pros to share ideas and what's working.
And finally, a really big challenge that comes up is preventing complacency. How do they tackle that creeping sense of it won't happen here?
Complacency. This question gets right to a core responsibility. Preventing it is fundamental because, well, complacency leads directly to accidents.
So how do you fight it?
The source suggests several key things: constantly reminding employees why safety is critical, what the consequences are if things go wrong, ensuring procedures are followed consistently every single time.
No shortcuts.
No shortcuts. Immediately correcting deviations you see, doing regular audits, not just for compliance, but to keep safety visible and top of mind. Actively encouraging people to report hazards and near misses, that culture piece again. And maybe most importantly, leading by example from all levels.
That idea of leading by example really loops everything back to that safety culture discussion, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It just underlines that safety isn't a checklist you finish and forget. It's a living part of the workplace. It needs constant attention, visibility, and real commitment from every single person every single day.
Wow. We really covered a lot of ground here, using those interview questions as our lens has shown just how much depth is needed for this role. It's everything from understanding priorities and building systems,
To navigating the tricky parts of human behavior and culture.
identifying specific hazards, handling incidents when they happen, and tackling those ongoing challenges like stress and, yeah, that ever-present risk of complacency.
It paints a picture of a role that needs technical know-how regulations, hazards but just as much, strong people skills, sharp analytical thinking to find root causes, and really leadership ability to influence how people act and think about safety.
It's definitely far more dynamic than just being the rule police.
Oh, much more.
And this deep dive really shows that being a safety specialist, while critical, isn't solely responsible for creating that safe environment, achieving a strong safety culture, preventing that complacency. It truly requires active commitment from all levels, from the very top leaders right down to every frontline employee.
Which leads to a final thought, maybe for you listening. If preventing complacency and building a real safety culture is a shared responsibility, needing that commitment from top to bottom, what role do you play, no matter what your job is, in staying vigilant and helping make sure everyone around you gets home safe?